The Power Pyramid, How It Came to Be. How It Functions, Part 1. The Shadow of Power, Chapter 1. The Pyramid in the Mind. Why do all civilizations imagine power as a pyramid? Power doesn't begin with kings or councils, empires or corporations. It begins with an idea, a shape carved into the human mind long before history started keeping score. Long before armies marched, long before priesthoods whispered their secrets, humanity perceived hierarchy as something tall, narrowing, and relentlessly pointed. A pyramid. Stable at the bottom, sharp at the top. Accessible to all, yet reached by almost none. Why this shape? Why does every civilization, from the Nile to the Yangtze, from the Andes to the Mediterranean, intuitively build its power structure as a tapering ascent with a coveted apex? The answer is buried in both archaeology and psychology, in both myth-making and mathematics. And it is the beginning of every story of power ever told. At the edge of the Sahara, in a ruin older than the pyramids of Giza, archaeologists found a slab of stone etched with a triangle. Not a literal building plan, something more symbolic. A visual hierarchy. At the wide base, hunters with spears. Above them, a row of robed figures. At the top, a single figure holding a curved staff. This image, dated to more than 8,000 years ago, predates nearly every known kingdom. Long before architecture, humanity imagined a ruler. Civilizations did not invent the power pyramid. They discovered it within themselves. The earliest human tribes, faced with the terror of wilderness, appointed leaders not out of reverence, but out of survival. The clever hunter, the wise elder, the fierce protector, these individuals naturally rose. As they did, the tribe reorganized. Influence clustered. Decisions concentrated. Responsibility compressed itself upward. What began as a practical necessity became a psychological instinct. And instincts harden into structures. Travel east along the Nile, and the pyramid becomes literal. To the Egyptians, power could not be a circle, a square, or a line. It had to be a shape that connected Earth to the heavens. Its geometry symbolized both stability and elevation. At its apex stood the pharaoh, a figure believed to be part god, part man. Beneath him, priests. Beneath them, scribes and officials. At the bottom, the countless workers who made the system possible. The genius of Egypt was not its stonework, it was its understanding of perception. The pyramid told a story. Order flows downward, obedience flows upward, and the world is safest when the structure remains intact. Millennia later, the Roman world would echo the same shape. The Senate believed itself to be the pinnacle of civilization, yet even it bowed to the emperor. Power concentrated at the apex the moment the Republic yielded to empire. It narrowed the decision-making class, sharpened the distinction between ruler and ruled, and created a vertical myth that would echo through every monarchy that followed. From Jerusalem to Istanbul, from Delhi to Beijing, the pattern repeated. Different languages, different gods, different armies, but the same architecture of power. Because the pyramid is more than a structure, it is a promise. In psychological studies conducted over the last 50 years, when humans are asked to draw authority, the vast majority sketch a triangle, wide at the bottom, narrow at the peak. When asked to draw equality, they draw a circle. When asked to draw chaos, they draw lines that never meet. The conclusion is startling, even when no one teaches it. Humans conceptualize power as hierarchical. This explains why civilizations that never contacted each other, Egyptians, Maya, early Chinese dynasties, built pyramids or step pyramids not only as tombs or temples, but as symbols of structure. It explains why modern institutions mimic the same shape. Governments, corporations, militaries, religious orders, NGOs, and even clandestine networks. The form persists because the psychology persists. But a shape is only the beginning of a story. The real mystery is not that power forms a pyramid, it is how it stays one. How it keeps reproducing itself through centuries of upheaval, revolution, collapse, and reform. How the names at the top change, but the narrowness of the apex remains constant. How the base expands, yet the peak remains untouched. Consider the Medici, the Venetian merchant families, or the imperial households of China. Each began as ordinary people, merchants, bureaucrats, minor nobles. Yet each discovered that the only reliable way to secure influence was to climb the invisible hierarchy that governed their world. In doing so, they strengthened the structure itself. Every ascent reinforces the idea of a peak. Every layer adds weight to the notion that someone must stand at the top. Every revolution replaces individuals, but preserves the shape. When France beheaded its king, the crowds believed they were destroying the pyramid. Instead, they simply elevated a new apex, Napoleon. Every overthrow becomes a substitution, not a dissolution. A republic becomes an empire. An empire becomes a state. A state becomes a syndicate of political, economic, and ideological elites. The shape remains. This is the first truth of power. Power is not an individual. It is an architecture. So how does this architecture form? What invisible forces shape it? The answer lies in 4 universal mechanisms. First, scarcity. The fewer the resources, the more valuable they become, and the more tightly they are guarded. Scarcity creates gatekeepers. Second, specialization. Knowledge clusters upward. Those who know more, see more, or predict more inevitably gain leverage. Third, coordination. Masses cannot coordinate as efficiently as small groups. History rewards those who can act quickly, cohesively, and decisively. Fourth, narrative. Every society builds stories to justify its hierarchies. Divine right, meritocracy, destiny, democracy, providence, efficiency. These are not lies, they are tools. Stories are the invisible mortar that holds the pyramid together. The Egyptians called it Ma'at. The Chinese called it the mandate of heaven. The Romans called it imperium. Modern nations call it legitimacy. Different words, identical function. And if all of this feels ancient, it should. But it is also profoundly modern. Look at global corporations, where CEOs sit at peaks that mirror royal courts. Look at intelligence agencies, where classified knowledge narrows leadership. Look at tech empires, where algorithms function as invisible priests translating raw information into power. Even social media platforms, built on billions of users, form pyramids in which influence concentrates upward, not outward. The 21st century looks flat only from a distance. Step closer, and the tapering edges reappear. In every age, in every culture, the structure endures. Because the pyramid is not imposed on humanity. Humanity imposes it on itself. At the dawn of civilization, a tribal elder stepped onto a rock and spoke for the group. When he did, an invisible triangle formed. Every civilization since has followed that shape. Every revolution has preserved it. Every technological age reinforces it in new and astonishing ways. The question then is not why the pyramid exists. It is why it grows stronger, and why, in the age of artificial intelligence and global networks, the apex may soon be crowned by something that is not human at all. The next chapter begins the search for the first builders of this architecture. The priest kings of Sumer, who turned survival into system and instinct into empire. In every era, the pyramid remained. Only the faces changed.